So we're going to take this opportunity to steal some things. So obviously there is our issue. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. 2 days from now, we have an epic Land Rover rally to attend. It'll be a 1,000 mile journey with 2 days of a little off-road action. Now here at the ranch, we have plenty of Land Rovers around, and 2 of them come to mind as wise choices to take up to northern Minnesota. That would be either the budget LR4 or the Eco Challenge Discovery. But I'm not necessarily always known to be wise, so I think we'll take the free one. That is right, if you are not familiar, this is Merlin, which is what I like to refer to as our free Land Rover LR4. This was kindly offered up to us here at the Lost Cause for free by a gentleman and his family. In my opinion, every Land Rover has great value, so we did give the family something for Merlin here. Wasn't willing to accept it for free, but it was still a great deal. But Merlin had a couple problems, mainly being the infamous timing chain problem in the 5-liter V8. Well, we remedied that, as you guys saw a few months ago. And right here is exactly our failure. But after that, being a terrible owner, I let it sit. Having never really driven this LR4, I figured what better way than to take it on a 1,000-mile journey with some wheeling action. 2 days from now, and it has issues. So I guess let's try and get it roadworthy. And today really proves the point as to why I say, if you're gonna own Land Rovers, own lots of them. I'll be honest, guys, I have been quite possibly the worst type of owner the last few months. Poor old Merlin back here has been living in quite the jungle. Sasha, we've had quite a mess of a summer around here. One of these days, I'll get into what's going on in my life. But either way, I've come to the determination, or the realization, that I can't own 12 vehicles at this point in time. I need to get down to like 5 or 6. But 12's just too many. But with that being said, we are going to re-resurrect Merlin. The last road trip went so well with the other one. Here is my nice setup. Awful dark. I guess all my road trips have gone great lately. I mean, it's kind of hilarious to drive 1,250 miles to come out to one of the best wheeling places in the country before we even were able to hit one single trail. Turny, turny? No turny, turny. We now have Bluetooth steering. So before we take that trip, there are a few things we need to address. First one is when we were sorting through the budget LR4 coolant leak, I robbed the bleeder screw off this one. I now once again have a plethora of these laying around. And we're gonna stick a freshly charged battery in this so we can get it into the shop. It's been a minute, a lot of minutes. Finally. Let's see how well it comes out of nature here. You can hardly even tell where it was. I don't know what's growing there. But either way, like I said, my life is a mess. I'm working on it, guys. I'm truly working on it. But this is definitely going to be a little bit cramped checking this over, but do what we got to do. But the main reason we pulled this back in, if you remember picking up old Merlin in Tennessee with the silver budget LR4, I mean, I enjoy calling the silver one that I paid $10,000 for the budget one when there's essentially a free one behind me. It makes sense in my head, though. It was budget back then. This is budget now. But either way, when we picked old Merlin up, the alternator went out on the silver one. We robbed it out of this one so we could make the trip back home with this on the trailer behind the silver one. And since then, I've been running this one around on the original bad alternator of the silver LR4. That's obviously not up to the task of going on a road trip, so I got another alternator sitting here. We're gonna swap that out. And then on top of that, we have a new issue. Letting things sit is never ideal. I thought this was water, but it's actually fuel. We'll look into that and see what's going on. With that trail and the puddle underneath, I'm thinking the fuel mileage would be suboptimal. I'm also thinking that's probably why the thing didn't want to start back up. The good news is we are now very well versed in swapping alternators on these, so this will be a pretty quick job. Plus I left all the skid plates off. Really smells like gas up here. Don't need to let all the bugs in too. Turns out this one's still bad. This one should be better. It frickin' smells like gas down here. That's mildly annoying. Now that we got that sorted out and the fresh one in there, we're gonna go after figuring out why the fuel isn't staying in the fuel rail. It's pretty inconvenient for it to leave that. Alright, so we have it down to the fuel rail itself now. The way it's leaking, it's going to be one of the O-rings at the top of the injector that goes into the fuel rail. It's kind of hard to see right now because fuel evaporates pretty fast, but I'm thinking it's either going to be that one or the last one. Look a little wet around it. I'm going to see if I can at least get the fuel pump to prime, and we might be able to figure it out. Otherwise, we're just going to tear it off and see which O-ring looks to be in sad shape. It's definitely that one there. So the fuel pump primed, opening the door, and we have a bunch squirting out. So we yank the rail off, and it should just be an O-ring that's tore. I'm kind of surprised this didn't rear its head when we fired this back up after doing the timing chains, but stranger things have happened. On a positive note, there's no fuel pressure to bleed off, so we can just undo the line. Well, that's pretty inconvenient. I just lost the little switcher for the ratchet. I don't know where that went. It was there when I was doing the alternator. Found it. The good news is we just pulled all the fuel injectors to do the timing chains not too long ago. So if those have to come out, it won't be quite the ordeal that it usually is. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it's a lot of slide hammer. Woo! And a special slide hammer at that. And you guys will have to let me know how the audio sounds. I went ahead and got some new mics, little wireless lapel mics, I think they're called, lavalier. I don't know, not actually a big camera guy, or I guess mic guy. We're gonna try these out instead of just the shotgun mic on the camera. This way you get my point of view, or point of sound. The other mic I use is mounted on top the camera, and it's what they call a shotgun mic, and it picks up everything that it's pointed at. So if I flip the camera around like this, I would also have to flip the mic around for it to sound correct. And then this way, if I walk across the shop, say over in the fab area, and the camera's over here, it should theoretically sound like I'm right at the camera. Of course, ooh, we definitely found our issue. Try and finagle this out without taking as much stuff as probably should come out. Of course, when you want them to stay in the cylinder head, they don't. There we go. So obviously there is our issue. That guy is supposed to look like that guy. This would have tore on the way going in. It is just very strange that it didn't leak instantly. I don't know if it was just lined up right, and then after sitting and going through some temperature changes, maybe it came apart more. I don't know. Either way, it's a problem and we gotta fix it, so time to find an O-ring. The good news about this whole situation is I got no one to blame but myself, because I'm the one who installed this, which in turn means I'm the one who gets to fix it. So we got a new setup here. This O-ring looks much nicer than this one. I'll make sure they're nice and lubed up, you know, to hopefully prevent that again. So we'll set these last two in there. Then we'll stick the rest in there. I think that went better. We shall find out here shortly. I'm gonna hook the battery back up so we can prime the fuel pump again and make sure we're not leaking. And that looks considerably better, so we'll slap this back together. And another note, still smells like gas up here. I think we might be in good shape. So we're gonna take Merlin for a quick spin to make sure everything is all kosher. But then, for the trip this weekend, we got a couple other small things to do. I suppose we should probably make this legal to drive as well. Well, we got 50 miles on it so far after waking it back up, which is probably a good thing to do, being we're gonna put like 900 miles on it, including some trails, in like a 2-day span. As always, Joe prepares wonderfully for life, but there's a couple things we need to sort out before that. One of them is this freaking annoying belt squeal. We can't be having that. The other thing is this. Those have seen some better days, so we're gonna take this opportunity to steal some things. I mean, I'm stealing them from myself, so is it really theft? But either way, the Budget LR4 is going to donate some things to the cause. That donation's gonna bring up a little bit of a unique situation. The frickin' V10 is taking up a lot of real estate up front here. So we're gonna have to squeeze some stuff in here. This is gonna take a little bit longer, being we have to do one corner at a time. And I have to navigate my way around everything. I done made it mad! Have I ever told you how much I dislike the stainless cap lug nuts? They always seem to swell up and are just a frickin' pain. Wonder if Sasha's ready for the road trip. So obviously, I'm sure you've gathered that I'm stealing the wheels off the silver one. A little oversized, a little cooler, because we always got to look good. But beyond just the wheels, we're going to need these guys too, which are the lift rods that we got from Lucky 8. These guys will give Merlin the correct amount of altitude to make the Terra Firma Steelies fit, because these have a 275/65 18-inch tire, much larger. It is about one of the easiest ways you can ever lift a vehicle. So all it does is trick the computer by changing what the level sensor sees. So you can see the aftermarket one is shorter, which will change the amount of air that the computer puts into the air spring here. And all we got to do is snap it onto the control arm and then onto the sensor arm there. Really doesn't get much easier than that. That means for now, we're putting the silver one back to stock height. We need these guys too. Just had to take a phone call. I was booking my camp spot for this weekend, so I guess it's official now. A little anti-seize to make sure these will actually come back off. And we're definitely gonna make sure we have these nice and torqued. This is the major thing I don't like about bolt-on spacers, is there's another set of lug nuts hidden behind the wheels. They usually don't get torqued much. I'd much preferred not to go on a road trip right after installing these, but we'll just keep an eye on everything. We'll bring the torque wrench along in case we got to do something. So we're gonna go around these far more times than we typically would on a wheel. That's just to make sure everything is nice and seated flush against the rotor. Then we'll rinse and repeat for the passenger side. Starting to look pretty frickin' sweet. I actually might like this look better with the black on black instead of the silver paint. But up front here, we have a little bit more involved in making those oversized tires fit. There's some cutting. We need to clearance some plastic up front. This little flap will be gone. That will be sliced. And back here, the frame horn needs to be clearanced. Pretty typical on these, done frickin' many of them. So not a huge deal. But that leaves us with the silver LR4 looking awful frickin' goofy with a little Carolina squat going on. But we're at stock height, stock tire in the rear. It's been probably like 3 years since it's had stock wheels on it. Strange. But I wouldn't be taking stuff off this just to swap onto Merlin to swap back. I'm into creating more work for myself, but I'm not going to do it intentionally. There's a reason why we're doing it this way, and we'll get to that later. So my attack on these is removing this screw and just tossing it. I slice this lower valance right along here, losing this front flap. And back here, we just let the plastics ride. It'll rub a little bit, but nothing detrimental. Just rub here and push it out of the way. But we need to cut the frame horn, which is not necessarily a structural piece in the sense of the vehicle. This is for if you're in a front end accident. This keeps the wheel from flying way back. But the majority of that structure will still be there. We just slice off a little bit of this front. There we go. So you can kind of see what we're going after there. We get it flushed out behind the wheel liner. Here is the piece we removed. That goes in the scrap bin. Then we are going to remove this lower screw on the back side here. So we'll leave that one gone just so it doesn't catch anything. There's enough other ones to keep this in place. And up front here, it's kind of hard to see, but right here, there's a screw. I'll catch it better on the other side. So there it is on this side. If you leave that in, the tire will polish it. One less catch point. So we pulled both of the lower little spoilers that were sitting down here. That just bolts right there. Then 3 of them underneath. So undo those, and then we're just gonna run a cutoff wheel down this. And I went ahead and didn't turn the camera on, but essentially took an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel, sliced right down this, took about that much off, essentially just the flange part, then just along the bottom, and there is the final result. That's what we do up front. That allows the fender liner to kind of move out of the way if we have compression and push it in there. I don't mind if it rubs the fender liner, I just don't want it to grab anything sharp or whatnot. Then back here, I took a flap disc and smoothed out this edge a little bit. It's gonna rub a little bit here, but we got the frame horn clearanced. That's good. We'll slap some paint on that to keep it from rusting. Now we can put the bigger tires on. Man, the budget LR4 looks a little boring now. I mean, I guess it has a more civilized look, is what we'll say. But the good news is, old Merlin definitely looks a whole lot freaking better. Man, that is cool. It's actually kind of neat looking without the rack on top. What do you guys think? I'm a huge fan. Looks much more off-road capable. I shouldn't even utter these words, but hopefully this goes better than taking the Eco out to Moab. Why did I say that? Now we gotta get that screeching out of the engine bay. So we're gonna get the fan off and take a look at the belt here. So I'm pretty sure it's not the fan belt. That looks pretty decent. And that sounds good. So we're gonna rip this fan pulley bracket off. Holds the fan, obviously. And there's another idler pulley behind this. All right, so I think I found the culprit. This is the backside of that fan mount. There's this idler pulley. Shouldn't really be able to hear that. It's a little rough feeling. I ripped the seal off just to see what kind of bearings inside there. Unfortunately, we are leaving tomorrow once again, and that's not something I can get my hands on right this moment. I was luckily able to find a belt in town. I was surprised about that. We are in Iowa. Not a whole lot of Land Rovers around here, although it does look like that guy has been on the shelf for a minute. It may even be older than the one I'm taking off, but I don't think that's going to be what our problem is. So that goes back to the theme of today's video, which is borrowing stuff off the silver one. We're just going to quickly yank that off. Silver one's good. I was just driving it, so we don't have to worry about that. And then we will order a fresh pulley for the silver one and put that on there. Once again, creating more work for Joe. But I really want to take Merlin up tomorrow, and we're pretty invested at this point. So the one off the silver one is considerably better. Nice, quiet, and smooth. I know so because I've already replaced this one. So we'll just take the whole bracket and flip it onto Merlin here, along with the new belt. We'll put the new belt on either way, since we're in here. $30 or whatever this is good insurance. All right, so we got the fan bracket swapped out, new belt in place, which was a good thing to do anyways, because the old one is looking, well, I guess kind of old. But I think this should be much quieter, or at least I'm hoping, because that would have been a waste of some precious time. How to get the fan belt back on isn't that fun. It's a stretch belt, so there's no tensioner. So I usually just put the belt over the pulley and the crank pulley, and then just kind of slide this over the snout and make sure you're lining up the holes before you do that. Then just kind of zip it on, and that'll suck this flat. This is a way of doing it that you just got to be careful and have a good feel on not stripping anything out. You'll kind of see how it will suck that pulley flat. Then we can thread the other two in. There's a special tool for these stretch belts. If I remember, I'll toss a picture of what that looks like up. But this is the easiest, quickest way I've found to handle that. We can slap the fan and everything back on, and hopefully we're good to go. The nice thing about doing it on this one, working on the silver one, is both of these recently had timing chains done, so everything comes apart. And then I've been into these 5.0s enough that I almost feel like I could do this in my sleep some days. Not sure if that's a dream or a nightmare. The fan is actually the biggest thing that gets easier when it's been a recently worked on vehicle, because sometimes these aren't too fun to get off, but luckily both of them were easy because we don't hammer the shit out of them back on around here. You don't really have to. Snug them up, then a light tap with a hammer. That's all you need, because they will tighten as they run, so we don't need to crank them down any more than that. Hey, we even have an engine cover again. See if we don't have any animals under the hood this time around. Considerably quieter. What a freaking disaster we left behind. But the good news is there's always another day to handle that. Got more important things to do. We're gonna make sure old Merlin goes down the road decent, and we swapped a bunch of stuff around. If it doesn't, we're kind of running out of time. We're leaving in 15 hours, and I gotta sleep in some of those 15 hours.
Right here, hold on.